Okay, welcome to the Monday, April 4th, 2022 meeting of the Planning and Zoning Board. Tonight we have Chris, Rob, and I are the sole board members. This meeting will be recorded and most likely posted on ECAT. And while conducting meetings remotely, we will endeavor to keep meeting operations as close to our standard procedures as possible. However, use of this platform will necessitate some additional meeting protocols. So we will proceed with a roll call. Peter Duchesne here.
Robert Stetson here.
Chris Anderson here.
Great. Stephanie, we have a couple of public hearings that are being continued.
Yes, 560 Foundry and 20 South Street have both asked to continue to the April 25th meeting.
So we would need a motion to continue both of those public hearings.
Motion to
go ahead, Chris.
Motion to continue 560 Foundry Street definitive subdivision and special permit to April 25th.
Second, Stetson.
All in favor? Duchesne, aye.
Stetson, aye.
Anderson, aye.
All right. And Chris, you got Old Forge comments in that?
I can add it now. Motion to continue 20 South Street flexible development until April 25th as well.
Stephanie, on that one, I've been recusing myself. I'm not sure that I can I participate in
You
continuance?
can vote yes, okay. Because you're not making any kind of comment or determination other than that you're acknowledging their request to continue by voting to continue.
Perfect, thank you. Stetson, second.
Okay. All in favor? Duchesne, aye.
Stetson, aye.
Chris? Well, is Chris still with us?
Yes.
Okay, well, motion passes.
Oh, did you not hear me? Sorry.
Oh, sorry. Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, we have a continued public hearing for 39R Paquonicut Avenue, the definitive subdivision. Stephanie, do we have some presenters
Yes.
here?
So at the at the last meeting, the board asked that the cul-de-sac that that the driveway that serves Lot A be moved to extend through the middle of the cul-de-sac as a way of further preventing future access from Guinevere Road to Lot B. And we'd asked that they show proposed grading so it could be demonstrated that there was no change in the offsite flow of stormwater, and also to plant some trees or some kind of vegetation to shield the existing house located at 43 Guinevere from the new house that was being constructed. So the revised plans that were submitted do show the driveway to Lot A exiting from the center of the westerly arc of the existing developed cul-de-sac. My interpretation of what the board was asking for was that it also extend through the middle of the undeveloped or not to be developed cul-de-sac. It doesn't really do that. It curves around. I think to do it would probably create a right turn in a very limited area that doesn't make sense. So my recommendation would be, again, they show that the first revised plan didn't show the driveway coming right through the middle, but in any case, it did, I'm sorry, but in any case, my recommendation to the board is that if there is a concern about another driveway extending onto Lot B, providing access to Lot B from Guinevere Road, which, you know, you've heard from the abutters and everyone, there's concern about that, is that the decision could probably include a condition that the board in the future not allow a common driveway that would provide access from Guinevere Road. Because the way it's constructed right now, I think that would be the only way you could get access to that Lot B, would be by way of a common driveway. So that would be my suggestion on how to handle that. They have provided grading that shows that the grades are fairly consistent with the existing grades and flow pattern of stormwater. So I think it's safe to say that there will not be additional runoff to the abutting property. And there was an early revised plan that came that was dated 3/29, and then there was one, I think it was dated 3/31. The 3/29 plan showed plantings along the northerly line of the abutting property and the northwesterly line. It didn't show the type of plant, so I asked Mr. Faria to provide the type of plant material that would be planted there, which he did. But when they did that, they removed the plantings along the northwest abutting property line. And I looking at that, that may not be consistent with the board's desire to provide shielding. So those are my comments to the revised plan. Peter, you're muted.
Oh, sorry. Could you please share your screen with the plan?
Oh, yes, I'm sorry. I'm sitting here, yeah. Okay, can you see the plan?
Yes, yeah, I followed. I thought just maybe for the audience.
Yeah. Okay, so again, this is where the driveway actually is exiting right through this westerly arc of the Guinevere Road cul-de-sac, which would limit the ability to put another driveway, but then it curves around like this. And at some point in the future, someone could probably come back and ask to add a second driveway off this, making it a common driveway. So that's why my recommendation was you might want to condition it to not allow a common driveway in the future. And then the first plan set that was submitted on 3/29 showed plantings right here along this property line, as well as here. And when I asked that the plants be identified, and what they're proposing are white pine, it showed plantings here. It was a more interesting pattern. Originally, it was just showing something like this, but they're staggering these, which makes some sense. It gives the trees enough room to grow and push out the lower branches. But then there's no buffer here. And I again, my understanding of the board's intent was to shield this property from the road and the house in their backyard.
Maybe we'll start with we'll let the applicants speak, of course, but maybe board members, do you have any comments on what you're considering for that area? I didn't hear that.
Sorry, do we know what tree covers there now? There are some trees from what I remember in that area. Like obviously the limit of clearing, we're not going to clear
Right.
to make the road, so.
Mr. Chairman, if I may, Scott Faria from Holmgren Engineering. As Stephanie said, I did on the 3/29 plan, we did show trees in that area, I guess immediately adjacent to and in line with house number 43. And after talking to Mr. Waluka about it, he felt like that area of the property was already wooded. It wouldn't, the lot line itself would not be disturbed by the driveway. To plant the trees there probably wouldn't make that all that much sense. They probably wouldn't have a chance to thrive, seeing that they were already in an area that is currently wooded. So for that reason, we eliminated that row of trees and just kept the trees between our proposed house and existing house number 43.
Yeah, I mean, I guess that just leads to the next, question maybe Stephanie is, no matter how many trees we ask for, in 10 years or so, the property owner could just decide to cut those down.
Right, there would be nothing preventing them from doing that.
And-
Just like there's nothing preventing the owners of 43 Guinevere from clearing right up to the property line and leaving no buffer.
Right, yeah, there was really no landscape buffer, in the Guinevere subdivision, decisional plans, right? That the perimeter was just the access path.
That's correct.
Well, I mean, maybe perhaps at a minimum, we could note existing wooded area to remain. Whether that actually means anything, I'm not sure. At least it would apply some intent.
We could certainly show that area right immediate to that lot line to remain in its current state, Mr. Chairman.
What do you think, Stephanie? Is that worthwhile, or just a? Or what do you like?
It certainly should prevent clearing when construction of the new house is done.
Right.
It becomes a zoning enforcement issue if in the future the property owner were to clear in that area.
Okay, Chris, Rob, what do you think? Should we do anything with this section, or?
Yeah, I think your suggestion is fine. I mean, I'd like to hear if the applicant has any ideas, but I think your suggestion makes sense.
Yeah, I think they show the approximate location of the tree line now, where this whole area is in the tree line, but being able to highlight that area, we want to make sure that the trees stay, even though the trees will probably stay elsewhere too, but I think it's important.
We'll specify that on the final plan.
Stephanie, were there some other issues that you think we need to?
No,
address here?
no, I thought the other items were addressed. And again, if the board wanted to consider a restriction on a subsequent future common driveway.
And that's something that you could work into the decision for us if we were just to
Yes, yep,
stipulate that.
yep.
Board members, any other comments before we move on with this? Are there any other conditions that we would?
Does the applicant have any comment about the common driveway condition?
I think we're fine with that condition.
And I think in my previous report, I just was a reminder that in the preliminary subdivision decision, there is a condition that no other lot be created.
Right.
So you'd have those two conditions. And the board would also need to vote to approve the waivers as requested, to grant the waivers that were requested.
And those have.
Wow.
Yeah. All right. Should we open this up to any public comment if there are any hands raised?
I see one hand raised. Or was that? So I just allowed Ann Grant to speak.
Okay, Ann, just please state your name and your address.
Sure, Ann Grant, 43 Guinevere Road.
Thank you.
I'm having some audio issues, so just let me know if I cut out. First, I want to thank all the parties, including the applicant, for considering the sight lines to my property, which is on the plan. So I appreciate that. I have a question though, which is that driveway, when I first was opposing this, the main concern I had was the ability of the applicant who lives on plot 33 or lot B, I guess you would call it, his ability, since he owns both, to just drive across that driveway, whether it is officially a common driveway or not. And somebody on the board had suggested making a condition of putting plantings or a wall or something on the left side of the driveway to keep the applicant from using it that way. That's a very important thing to me because, my main opposition to this has always been the possibility of this becoming a pass-through for the applicant. So I would really, really urge the board to require there to be something to the left side of the driveway so that the applicant can't simply just throw down some gravel and drive, across the driveway himself. Because who knows how long it will take to construct this and sell it and all of that. And I'm just very concerned that it becomes a de facto pass-through. And I have to rely on you guys about the grading, I guess. And I know there were concerns raised about the environmental issue, and I haven't heard any response to that. So that's what I wanted to say today. Thank you.
Do we have any other hands raised? I didn't look myself.
I don't see any.
Yeah, I mean, I actually thought about.
Wait a minute. I'm sorry, Peter. There is one.
Can you hear me?
Yes, just please state your name and address for the record.
Yeah, it's Harry Cordery, 42 Guinevere Road.
Okay, go ahead.
Again, I know we talked last time about the concern of being a former foundry. And I thought the applicant was gonna show some kind of documentation that it was tested and it was a clean property. I didn't know if I thought I was under the understanding maybe it was gonna be brought up to show us. Was that ever done?
We did not receive anything that I saw.
I don't know if you remember last meeting. I thought he said he did have some information on it. He was gonna share it with us.
I can speak to that if you like.
Go ahead, please.
Okay, this is Aaron Waluka, 31 Rear, Pequannock Ave, Northeastern. I believe Greg Strange had taken that question at the last meeting and had pointed out that in order to get any financing, a clean 21E has to be presented. I had also pointed out that one of the neighbors on Christmas Eve had called the emergency response team for the DEP, claiming that they believed that there was contamination here. They did come out and they didn't find anything. I did ask them if they were going to be doing a report. They said that they only do reports when they find something for emergency responses. So I don't have anything in writing from that. I did try to locate the 21E that I did when we first purchased this property in 2008, and the engineering firm, I cannot locate it and I can't find a copy of it anywhere. So I I am going to be getting a new 21E done, so I'm going to have to provide it to the bank for the financing on the other lot. So I'd be happy to share the results of that with the neighbors if they prefer, but I don't believe that can be a condition of the approval. But I have no problem sharing that. It will most likely not be a public record because only reportable quantities of hazardous materials at a property are reported. So, but I have no problem mailing them a copy or walking one over where there are neighbors. So if that helps.
Yeah, it'd be nice to see some kind of documentation. If it did have the property tested, I'm sure they give you something to show to keep the neighbors a little at ease. That would probably be a good thing to do.
Yeah, when I have the other 21E done, I already had one done in 2008 and it came up clean. There were no concerns and no issues. I don't have the paperwork, so unfortunately I have to do another one. When I have that, I have no problem walking a copy of it over to you. But the state does not require it be filed anywhere. If there's nothing found, that's an issue. Otherwise, there'd be a couple library buildings full of clean site reports.
Hey, could I ask one more question? This is a little, I'm looking at another piece of property in Easton, happens to be on a dead end. What would I have to look for not have one of these paper cul-de-sacs? Again, would anyone in Easton who lives on a dead end or a cul-de-sac, should they be concerned that if they do buy a piece of property that this could happen again? Anytime you abut someone else's property where they could put another lot in? I mean, you said there's only been 2 in Easton.
Yeah, I mean, so every property is different, so it's really hard to tell, what, I think anytime that there's, vacant land behind your home, and it's an 8 acre, 4 acres of, 8 acres, you might want to consider the fact that the property owner might choose to try to, use that land for a purpose rather than just, its existing use.
Yeah,
Sure.
because like I said, I'm looking at another piece of property. I'm on my 5th house in 10 years, so I'm just concerned of people, they move in, they're spending $800,000-900,000. They think they're on a dead end. Next thing you know, and it's opening up down the end. This is the first time I heard of a paper cul-de-sac. Is there anything written out in the town? That, I mean, when did this come about? Is this something that's been always here? Or is this something that it's been documented, but it's, never had access to it? Or is it for people in Easton to see and to let them know that this could happen when they do go onto a dead end or a cul-de-sac? Or is this something?
Mr. Chair, would you like me to answer that?
Yes, please.
Yeah, I would love to.
Okay, so any property that you don't own may have the potential of being developed. And one of the purposes, looking at the plan right here, you see this stub right here. This has generally been required when road construction occurs. It's generally an easement that would allow access to an abutting property if someone wished to develop it in the future with the roadway. So again, unless you own the property or it's restricted as protected open space, or there's some topographical constraint that would prevent a road from going through, there's always a likelihood or a potential, there's always a potential that land can be developed in a way that you might not have thought it was at the time you were purchasing your home.
Okay,
and it has to be, of course, consistent with zoning or through a variance issued by the Board of Appeals.
So when you use the word "it may," when you say "it may," what qualifications would allow that to happen? I mean, is it you know, if you get two abutting properties, you know, when you use the word may, I don't understand.
It really just depends on the property. Every property is unique, so it's, I'm not sure how Stephanie or I could really respond to that.
Because the other thing is just the aesthetics of the street, you know, like I said, I know everybody wants something. I have nothing against someone building on their own property, but you gotta do an established neighborhood that's been here for 50 years. People being disrupted because when they moved on a cul-de-sac or a dead end, this is what they expected. It's no longer gonna be a cul-de-sac or a dead end. It's gonna be it's going to be another house and another access, which you don't know what could happen. And the other problem I have is the aesthetics of the neighborhood. You come up Guinevere Road and then you open up to, I mean, one of the buildings looks like a lookout tower for Paul Revere when the British is coming. So the aesthetics just don't seem to mesh into the neighborhood. And now when you open it up, is it going to be more visible? Because right now you're looking at, there was a nice wall there, but the applicant tore it down, never put it back. And now you see just a bunch of pallets and looks like all rundown buildings. So again, you got a neighborhood that people invested in. And now once it's opened up, this is what you're going to be exposed to. You saw the property. You know, how do you think the people should react on the street that put time and money into the homes, spent all this money, put their light, now it's going to be open to that? I understand you. No one has, I don't think anybody has a problem building a home. Why couldn't he come from his street? Why does he have to disrupt, you know, several residents on another street that's been paying taxes for years and years and years, probably millions of dollars, and now you're getting disrupted for one home, and you have to open up a cul-de-sac on a street that's been here for over, 50 years, changing the whole dynamic. You all live in Easton, you know, you wouldn't want it either. I have nothing, like I said, why couldn't he come from his property?
Yeah, we went over that a long time
Yeah,
ago. So this is the plan they presented, and this is what we have before us right now.
Yeah.
So thank you for your comments.
Well, all right. Well, I guess in Easton, then this can happen to anybody, I guess.
Mr. Chair, you have a Bridget Malakowski.
Okay. Go ahead, Bridget.
Hi, this is actually Andrew Malakowski, and it's 15 Lancelot Lane. I appreciate everyone's time, and I certainly don't want to belabor this point, but I would just like to, for a moment, reiterate the concern that Ms. Grant shared earlier. As a homeowner in the neighborhood, I would just like to state that over the last several years, we have seen very unusual things down Guinevere in this property, and it has included a mobile home. It's included heavy machinery. It included an event where parking was occurring, and this was back when there was a stone wall that was removed and there was no access point. And so I think Ms. Grant's point about this creating a possible use, whether it's allowed or not, whether it's a formal shared driveway or not, I think that it creates a real concern for the neighborhood, where someone who has in the past used this for, I will say, unorthodox reasons, is going to have an even greater ability to use this as a pass-through. And I know that has been discussed, but it would be one thing if there was no history of unusual activity on this property. And that's simply not the case from the last several years. And so I just wanted to reiterate that point and that concern, that we have seen it before on this property and on this cul-de-sac. And that was when there was no shared driveway, no driveway of any kind. And that did not dissuade the homeowner from treating it like a pass-through already. So my concern would be that any bit of a driveway here would open it up to lot B and a possible pass-through. So I simply wanted to reiterate that concern.
Okay, thank you. So Stephanie, were you mentioning that, given that the driveway more or less takes up most of the access to Guinevere Road, it would become more of a common driveway if Lot B were to use that for access?
I would see that, yeah, that potential would exist.
So if the driveway were in the future used for some sort of unwanted traffic or use, then that would be a zoning enforcement issue as far as.
Again, if someone at Lot B constructed some type of driveway and that connected to the proposed driveway and starts using it for access to Guinevere Road, that would be a common driveway. And again, it would be a zoning enforcement issue.
Whereas as it is now, without an approved plan, Lot B has a right to travel over Guinevere Road whenever it chooses, with a cutout driveway or not.
He does not.
He does not.
No.
So you're saying any time that any vehicle from the existing property would have accessed Guinevere Road would have been, against some sort of.
And I mean, I might take that back.
Okay, yeah, I was thinking that. That's why I was thinking that the
I might take
driveway
that
is
back.
actually sort of improving the situation.
Because it has frontage on this unconstructed cul-de-sac.
Yeah, so the placement of the driveway actually at least somewhat limits Lot B from, using that,
Mm-hmm.
using the driveway or using Guinevere Road for access, at least. In
I mean, they
theory.
couldn't cut over someone else's property to get to the developed cul-de-sac.
Mhm. Yes, yeah, whether or not that would be enforced in the future is a different issue. Right?
Mhm.
Do we have any more, anyone else from the public or board members, applicants? Would anyone like to have any comments regarding what we just heard?
Ms. Grant has raised her hand again.
Okay,
Hi, thanks. Just a point of Ann Grant, 43 Guinevere Road. A point of clarification is that when you visited this property, you may have seen the stone wall. There is I assume, publicly owned stone wall that crosses that stub, that 40 feet at the end of Guinevere. It's there because Mr. Cordry in 42 Guinevere put it back after the applicant removed it in order to be able to access the Guinevere cul-de-sac from his property for a specific purpose. And so he put it back. That's why it's still there. But there is actually a barrier. He can't drive his vehicle onto Guinevere Road right now without again moving something that doesn't belong to him. And my concern that Harry and the Malakowskis put so eloquently is that there's a history here of having a valid concern that this individual will just use it as a driveway as soon as something is allowed to be built there. And that there really needs to be some kind of barrier so that if that barrier isn't built, that's something we can complain about.
So perhaps, a similar stone barriers along that first segment of the water line. Stephanie, can you point that out?
Are we talking right here, Peter?
Yeah, right there. Yeah, that first segment there. I mean, that would sort of replicate what was there, but just in, but more or less kind of blocking the access to that driveway.
If you're asking me, that I don't know if you're asking me or not, but that sounds like a great idea.
Yeah, I was sorry, I was putting it out there to see if maybe you thought that would.
I think that would be great. In order to do this, they're taking down a stone wall, and if they put the stone wall right there along that W line, that would presumably keep him from using it to just drive across the land. And there's some bare land there too. It's not wooded, so he could drive a vehicle as soon as there's an opening, it would be
Yeah.
possible to do it.
Right, and I mean, some might say that that's a little bit awkward, but, you know, as has been pointed out, this, you know, this cul-de-sac that we're using for frontage is a little bit awkward in itself. So we're trying to work with everybody here to at least, you know, make it better than it is right now, so. I don't know if the applicants have an objection to that, or board members think it's a bad idea.
Mr. Chairman, if I may, please.
Yes, sir.
Walter Marioni, and I, with the law firm of Marioni, Shaughnessy and Udi, I represent the applicant. And just, I know that the preliminary discussions were a few months ago, but during those conversations, the applicant did agree that he would not access Lot B, not only off this driveway, but through this cul-de-sac. So a condition to that effect is amenable. The applicant's amenable to that condition. I know we're talking about a little bit more right now, but I wanted to sort of just go back to that a condition to the effect of not accessing Lot B from Guinevere is perfectly acceptable to the applicant and is enforceable. I know zoning enforcement is never fun, but at least it opens the door for zoning enforcement if there is an issue, as opposed to not having the condition in there at all. So I just wanted to remind everybody that conversation did take place, and Mr. Maluka did agree to it.
Yeah, I did watch the last meeting, but just reminded me, so now this new cul-de-sac, which, whose land is that if this were to be approved?
I'm sorry, what was the question?
Maybe Stephanie, yeah, the new paper cul-de-sac, that land will go to what entity? If this plan were approved?
That's a good question, because the town wouldn't, it would remain a private way. And it would be owned presumably
Be owned
by
equally by the two lot owners.
Right.
Thank you, Walter.
Yeah. I'm sorry, I didn't understand what you were asking at first. Yeah, we
Okay, no, that's
owned equally by the two lot owners. And that should be a condition as well, right? Just to
Yes.
make it clear.
Yep.
Yeah.
All right, well, I mean, I prefer the stone wall just to kind of work with the neighbors here, but I'll leave that up to the other two board members, because I'm only one of three here today, if we choose to move on from this stage.
Yeah, I think it's a great idea. I mean, there's already a stone wall there, so it kind of preserves some of the look, and it can address some of the concerns of the neighbors. I think it's a great idea.
Okay. Yep. So Stephanie, that's just that first segment whatever I call the segment.
Right.
If-
Yeah, right.
Before
When you
the
say
dog-
just the first, do you mean this one or the dog leg here?
Oh, no, just the first one.
Okay, so just there.
If I could, sorry, Aaron Waluka.
Yep, go ahead.
The part of the clearing here was run by the fire department, and a stone wall there, and I'll defer this to Scott, if that's going to interfere with the turning radius of fire trucks being able to get back there, which we've already run this by them. So I'm not sure about that.
So may I ask a question, Peter? Why, I mean, presumably the driveway is wide enough for an emergency vehicle to pass, right?
Right, we have the 12-foot driveway, 18-foot cleared width, which is what the fire department wants in situations like this. So the driveway as shown in the plan currently meets the fire department requirements.
So that should not be an issue.
Right.
What the question that Mr. Waluka raised.
Okay. I wasn't sure if the width covered that additional 6 feet, but if it does, then sure. A stone wall along that first W, I don't see an issue with that.
Okay. So thus far, we have to accept the waivers. have the condition of the stone wall, the shared ownership of the paper cul-de-sac, the wooded area that shall not be cleared, noted on the plan.
Mhm.
Or is there anything else?
The
So
stone
stipulation that,
wall,
the stipulation that lot B does not access Guinevere Road.
Can I ask a question? Sorry, I don't know if I'm still muted.
Yes, that's fine. Thanks.
So it's Anne Grant, 43 Guinevere Road. I'm just curious, that line, the property line right behind my house at 43, where it shows the pines on the left. Are you guys planning to chop down all the trees that go into the little like triangle? I'm sorry, the angle. I think maybe Stephanie, your mouse is almost there. You see the little flag that sticks out of my property backwards of land. Stephanie, I was wondering if you could move your cursor.
You mean over to the right?
I don't know. I'm sorry, Ann. I
So you
don't
know
know
how
what you're referencing.
Okay, so my property's like a square
here.
with a little, yes, with a
You're
chunk
talking-
sticking up. Yeah, so that property line right there on the left, and then the one directly behind my house, that angle right there. I'm just wondering if they're planning to cut down all the trees right there. I'm just curious. It's like 20 feet from my back deck, or maybe it's 25
Yeah, I
feet
mean,
from my back deck to that.
I know what you mean,
property.
but I think when we start talking about that, we get into the fact that we can't enforce those trees to remain any more than, you can enforce, you to keep the access path there clear. I mean, it's just, we're doing our best, but.
That's why I'm asking out of curiosity, because I thought maybe they would just tell me so I know.
If you're asking that question of me, Aaron Waluka, every tree costs to come down, and the beauty of this spot, as you know, are the woods that are here. So the intent would be to not remove any unnecessary trees, and that's kind of why the house is positioned where it is, to stay out of that area. So the initial intent is to not clear that. That being said, could someone buy the house, clear the whole lot, and put a fence around the whole thing for the dogs to run around? That's always possible, but the intent is not to do that.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate it. I just wanted to know the answer. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Sure. Okay, well, if there are no more comments on board members, what do you think?
I think all the suggestions made make sense. I think the rock wall is a good idea. Helps with the neighbors' concerns, and then obviously knowing that they're going to leave as many trees as possible makes sense. So I agree with it.
Okay,
I agree as well.
Okay, sounds like you guys are close to a motion. Sure.
Do we have to close the public hearing?
Yes.
Yes. Motion to close the public hearing for our Pequannock.
Second, Stetson.
Any further discussion on closing public hearing? I don't see any from my screen. All in favor, DeShane, aye.
Stetson, aye.
Anderson, aye.
So we can't accept any more information. We can talk about this more, or we can entertain another motion regarding the application itself.
I'll make a motion to approve 39R Pequannock based on all the conditions that Peter mentioned earlier, unless we rename them now.
Stetson, second.
Okay, just further discussion? Stephanie, I think we caught all the conditions that we wanted, right?
Yes, yes, and I understand from those conditions, they need to submit a revised plan showing the wall and the planting, the area not to be cleared.
Okay, great. So all in favor, Deshane, aye.
That's an aye.
Anderson, Walter has his hand raised. I just wanted to mention that.
We better listen to Walter first.
I just want to make sure, for clarification purposes, for the record, that the vote, the motion and the vote for approval, subject to the conditions, also was including the approval of the waivers.
Right.
I didn't hear the waivers specifically mentioned.
Oh,
It was mentioned early when they first tried to make a motion, I think.
Right,
Yeah.
right. But
Yes,
not in
it
the-
should be
not in the motion.
restated,
Just
yes.
clarification, that's all. I'm
Yes.
sorry.
Thank
is
you.
that acceptable,
Yeah.
Walter? All right, thank you. All right, motion passes with the conditions and the waiver mentioned by Walter.
Thank you, folks. Good night.
So, thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you. Have a good night, everybody. Appreciate it.
Thank you very much.
Okay, Stephanie, and board members and anyone in attendance. Now we have a few proposed zoning amendment public hearings.
Right, so I think we need to read the public notice into the record.
Yes, yeah, I don't have the fresh copy of that, and I'm, I guess if I'm acting chair, then perhaps Suzanne could
Is
share
it,
that with someone else to read.
that's what you have on the screen, right, Stephanie?
Okay.
Yeah,
everyone
I
has
have
my-
it up.
Oh, it's right there.
All right, I can read it. In accordance with the provisions of Chapter 40A, Section 5 MGL, the Easton Planning and Zoning Board will hold a public hearing on Monday, April 4th, 2022 at 6:30 p.m. This hearing will be held virtually via Zoom for the purpose of receiving public comments concerning the following amendments to the Easton zoning bylaw, Chapter 235 of the Easton Town Code. Number 1, solar voltaic installation, 235.14 accessory uses, Appendix A1 and Appendix A2, 235.60 definitions, and 235.18 accessory structures. The next one was Queesick Commercial District Notes, Appendix A2, Special Districts 4. Copies of the proposed zoning bylaw amendments are available for review at the Planning and Economic Development Office at 136 Elm Street, Northeast Massachusetts during regular business hours. The draft zoning bylaw amendments are also available on the Planning Department website. This notice is also available at masspublicnotices.org. Any person interested or wishing to be heard should appear at this time and place designated for the public hearing. Gregory Strange, Chair. It is Peter Deshane today.
All right, see, Stephanie, so for solar voltaic.
Right.
you have it on the screen right there.
And everyone will recall that the recommendation here, the genesis of this was that Amas wanted to ensure that residents could, have the right to install solar panels or solar photovoltaic installations on their property for residential use. To a size that was consistent with residential use. So the language here that's proposed to be added is this section 1 that's highlighted. Solar photovoltaic installation sized for primary use, installations over 25 kilowatt and intended to generate electricity commercially above the reasonable consumption, requires site plan review by the Planning and Zoning Board. So,
And this was really the current practice of any similar proposals.
exactly, this is right.
Just really kind of more putting it into the bylaw, so
Yeah.
people know exactly what to expect, which is
Exactly. So again, it just puts it into the table of uses, which are listed here. And then adds solar photovoltaic installation, which is a mouthful, to the definitions.
Well, we've already gone over this a few times, so it looks good to me. Anyone else have any more suggestions or ideas for this?
I think we looked at it last time and
Yeah.
looks good.
Okay.
And Mr. Chair, I don't see any members of the public raising their hands.
Okay, I think maybe we should just take these one at a time, and we'll just, if we want to make motions as we move along on each one, we can knock them off. I think we should wait till the end before we talk about everything.
Motion to approve the photovoltaic installation modification to the bylaws.
I think we're going to need to close the public hearing on that.
Yes,
and then
yes.
All right.
And then we're recommending, right, we're still just recommending for town meeting.
Yes, vote to recommend to town meeting.
Okay.
So do we close the public hearing on just one?
Yes.
Make a motion to close the public hearing for the first one, so on solar photovoltaics.
That's in second.
All in favor? DeShane, aye.
Stetson, I.
Anderson, I. Make a motion to recommend the solar photovoltaic installation updates to our bylaws.
Stetson, second.
Any further comment? Nope. Seeing and hearing none. All in favor? DeShane, aye.
Anderson,
aye.
Okay, motion passes. Okay.
Okay,
we
the
have-
next one for accessory structures. Really just creates consistency with the definition, and references that. And so what we're adding here for accessory structures in the residential district, and is set forth in section 235-60 definitions, you say, use accessory, any accessory structure shall be subordinate in size and appearance to the principal structure.
That's great. That's a nice concise improvement to what we
Yeah.
have.
You did a great job with that.
I didn't write that.
I mean, the board really,
We all did. It took a couple of years and some long conversations. All right, any other comment, board members, any public hands raised?
motion to close the public hearing for 235-18.
Second, Stetson.
All in favor, DeShane, aye.
Anderson, I.
Stetson, I.
Motion to recommend the 235-18 changes.
Stetson, second.
Okay, any further discussion or hands raised? Seeing and hearing none. All in favor, DeShane, aye.
Stetson, I.
Anderson,
okay, the last one is a housekeeping item. The board will recall that back in 2021, I think it was 2021, the board voted and it subsequently passed at town meeting to change the ratio of commercial to residential in a mixed use development in Queeset Commercial District C, that from 2/3 commercial to 1/3 residential to 1/3 commercial, 2/3 residential. And that was stated twice in the bylaw, but then it was referenced as 1-to-2, a 2-to-1 ratio of office to retail. And that 2-to-1 needed to be changed to be consistent with the 1/3, 2/3 requirement. So this makes that change.
All right, and this doesn't change the ultimate ratio. This just is talking about just the phasing or
It's, yeah, yeah.
okay. Well, that's
Motion to close the public hearing for Queesit Commercial District notes section.
Stetson, second.
all in favor, DeShane, aye.
Anderson, I.
Stetson, I.
Motion passes.
Motion to recommend the change to the mixed use commercial to residential typo.
Stetson, second.
Any further comment or hands raised? Seeing and hearing none, all in favor, DeShane, aye.
Anderson, I.
Stetson, I.
Motion passes. Right. Those are our 3 zoning amendments.
Yep. So the 2 items that, oh, Mr. Chair, I'm sorry.
Oh, no, that's it. Go ahead.
All right. I had 2 items that I'd like to update the board on, but I would prefer to put that off until the next meeting when we have a full board.
Okay, great idea. And I think, do we have some minutes to
Yes.
be approved or change? Or change and approve? Did anyone have any changes to the meeting minutes?
Nothing here.
Nope.
All right.
Motion to approve the minutes for March 21st.
Stetson, I. Or Stetson,
favor?
second, excuse me.
All in favor, DeShane, aye.
Now Stetson, I.
Yeah, all right. I'm rubbing off on you. Chris? Did you vote?
That's a wrap. Motion to adjourn.
Stetson, second.
All in favor, DeShane, aye.
Stetson, I.
Anderson, I.
Have a good night, everybody.
Everyone, nice job.
Night.
Thank you.